Hello, my name is Lisa Parker. I'm the Director of Alumni Career and Business Services for the MSU Alumni Association. Welcome to today's webcast, Working Effectively with Executive Search Firms for Companies. Joining us today is Ken Glickman. Ken is the Managing Director with Gilbert Tweed International and also happens to be the Senior Executive Recruiter for MSU's FRIB, Facility for Rare Isotope Beams. I know Ken personally and actually invited him to speak with us today, getting a lot of calls, receiving a lot of calls in the Alumni Association from companies trying to get a handle on how to have effective and meaningful relationships with third-party recruiters. Ken's been in that space for a long time and has a very candid approach to discussing his thoughts on what you as companies, as hiring managers, can do better. This is an interactive conversation. Ken has a lot of content to share with us today, but if you have questions, you are welcome to raise them in the chat area of this webcast that's on the left-hand side. To type in the chat area, there's that lower, that bottom search bar in the bottom left, and that's where you would enter your information. So without further ado, let me say this webcast is being recorded, and you are welcome to request a copy of the recording. I will post my email address in the chat area for those of you requesting a copy. So without further ado, Ken, I would like for you to turn on your microphone and take over the reins for our webcast today.
I am here. Is the mic working, everybody?
I can hear you. You sound great.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, Lisa. It's my pleasure to do this presentation. It's on one of my favorite topics, which is working with recruiters or headhunters. And I have a little cough today. And I will try to make it as quiet as I possibly can. And it's interesting to do this kind of event because obviously I don't know anybody who is listening to me or if anybody is listening to me. And I would love for anybody to please type in questions, because although I have a lot of content to spew forth today, your questions are always more important than my ramblings. So please let me know, and this is a general kind of presentation. I don't know if you folks are general managers or if you're HR managers or really what you are, but I certainly welcome your comments, and again, I'm very thankful to be doing this presentation. So as you see by the by the headline here, I've titled the talk, Headhunters, Why and How to Use Them. And let me just say, the word headhunters is not at all a disparaging word. We use it ourselves, and it's not a problem. So don't feel that that it's an awful thing to use the word headhunters. As you see, my name is Ken Glickman. I'm the Managing Director of Gilbert Tweed International, which is a international boutique retained executive search firm, and we are all over the world with headquarters in Manhattan. But in addition to that, I'm also the Senior Executive Recruiter for the FRIB, the Facility for Rare Isotope Beams here on the campus at Michigan State University. This is the largest grant that the university has ever received. It's a $614 million grant from the Department of Energy to open up a whole new facility next to the cyclotron in nuclear energy, and they've asked me to assist them with that. So I always say yes to MSU, and that's where I work as well, although the majority is with Gilbert Tweed. And to tell you a little bit about myself, I've been in the recruiting business for over 30 years. I do executive coaching on my own. I've done contingency recruiting, which we'll talk about later, and I also worked for 10 years in the field of outplacement, working with folks who have been laid off and fired from their jobs. We work with the companies that do that and with the individuals who are affected by it. So I did that with Right Management Consultants, which is the largest global company that does outplacement. So I think I'd like to start our talk today with the idea of what is a recruiter. And let me begin by saying that there really are three names that I can come up with. One is an executive search consultant. Another is a headhunter. And it's funny how that has really become the major nomenclature for this. So it's interesting that it is, but headhunter is a very common used word, and the other is simply a recruiter. And that the name recruiter is confusing for some folks because they think of a military recruiter, someone who recruits for the Army or the Navy as a recruiter. But we're all recruiters, and so I actually, when people ask me what I do, I usually say I'm an HR consultant or a search consultant or a recruiter. I usually don't use the word headhunter, although I don't mind the word at all. So what kind of recruiters are there? Well, we're really dealing with three major categories here, and that is an individual player, an individual recruiter who works out of his own home or out of his own office, and the way virtual officing is possible today, it's very easy to do that. They have access to all of the databases and everything that people need, and so that is the individual player. The other is a part of a large multinational company. There's very large companies out there that do this work. Management Recruiters is one, and Manpower is another, and Korn and Ferry and Spencer Stewart. These are very large multinational companies, and they have offices everywhere. And they are highly regarded by many individuals, or just a local person, someone who works locally, who works in the local marketplace and knows those people locally, and it can be very highly regarded in that area. So those are the kinds of recruiters that we're talking about. Now, these three other categories, contingency, retained, and contract, are important for you to understand what the difference is there. So a contingency recruiter is someone who works for a fee, but the fee is only paid after they have successfully found a candidate. So if you came to me and you said, I would like you to search for a program manager in my marketing department, and it's a contingency search, so I will do all the work and do all the recruiting and do all the interviewing, and at the end of the search, when you hire this individual, I will get paid. But if you don't hire this individual, I will not be paid. And if another recruiter is also working on the same deal, which is a very common thing, and that other recruiter makes the placement, as it were, I will not get paid. Also, if the company is also searching on their own, and they are putting ads in papers, and they're networking through their contacts, and they find someone, I will not get paid. So the contingency recruiter is really doing all this work and spending all this money with phone calls and everything else totally at his or her own expense. And hopefully when the placement is made, he will get paid at that time. Now, I started out in this business in a contingency environment. And a lot of companies like to do that because they feel that they are saving a little bit of money doing that. Not sure that they do, and we'll talk about that later. The second one that I have listed here is the retained executive search option. So this person charges about the same as a contingency, maybe a little bit larger. We'll get into all the fees on another slide. And the retained person there are two big differences. Number one, he signs an exclusive agreement with the client. So when he's doing the search, no one else can do the search. They are the only ones. And number two, they get paid up front. They get 1/3 of their fee even before they start to work. So that is their retained contract with the company that, in fact, they are working with them, and the work that they put in will be paid for. And everyone says, well, what if you don't find anybody? Well, we always do. It may take longer than we'd like, but we stay on the job until we find somebody. The contingency person, if it's a very hard search, or if the company is not being very open with them, and they don't work clearly with them, they will stop doing the search because it's simply not worth their time. For a retained recruiter, they will not stop the search because they already have the client's money in their pocket. They will continue to search until they find someone. Now, in terms of guarantees for whether this individual is the right person, that will be discussed on another slide. Now, the contract recruiter is the one that usually will recruit folks for IT, for nursing, for clerical, and they charge either by the hour or the month, and they get a percentage out of that. And this discussion that I'll have with you today will not talk much about the contract side because, frankly, I don't know that much about it. It's not the area that I work in. I've worked both in contingency and retained, and we will focus on that. And the contract world is a big world, and a lot of companies use them, but I'm not that aware of them, so we will not go into that. So let's go on to the next slide. So the question is, why spend the money? Why do this? Well, I think we have to realize that the greatest asset in any company is the people. Now, companies spend a lot of money and spend a lot of time thinking about their marketing, their advertising, their website, their IT, even their products. But you know what? The most important thing in that company is people. And you can have the best looking website, even the best product, and that product will not be sold if the right people are not selling it. So getting the right people in the right job is the most important aspect of any company. And if companies and leaders of those companies truly understand the profound impact of the right people in the right job, then they will understand why it is important to spend the money for that service. The hiring impact is the greatest impact of any decision that a company can make. If they hire the wrong president, I just read yesterday that they hired the new president for JCPenney to turn JCPenney around, and the president was fired after 18 months. And I don't know what he was paid as president of JCPenney. I'm sure it was in the millions of dollars, and I don't know what kind of severance agreement that he had, but I'm sure that was in the millions of dollars, and it was not a good hire. He was fired after 18 months, and I wonder what that really meant, what that meant to JCPenney in terms of money. I'm sure a lot. So I think that we really have to look at that. I want to go back to the people aspect a little bit here. Years ago, when Steve Jobs was alive and was the head of Apple, he would do a presentation every summer on the new products that Apple was coming out with. And these were huge media events. He would talk about the iPod or the iPad or the iPhone and make a big splash about this. But at the end of his life, the reporters and the world media was less concerned about the presentation and the products than they were about Steve Jobs. What did he in fact look like? Was he healthy? Was he going to continue leading the company? Because they knew the truth. And the truth was that Steve Jobs' leadership to that company was more important to Apple than the products that he was presenting. That's how important his leadership was. So I think that we really have to realize how important leadership is. And now we talk about the risk factor. So there's a huge risk factor when hiring the wrong person. Obviously, financially, there's a huge risk factor, but also there's a risk factor in terms of morale, and all kinds of areas that go into what goes wrong when the person is the wrong hire. People try to save money. Companies try to save money by not paying for a recruiter, but when they hire internally and they hire the wrong individual, it ends up costing them lots of money, lots of lost time, lots of morale issues, and it ends up that if they did a risk assessment the way our insurance companies do and our banks do, they would see that the risk factor of not hiring a professional recruiter for their important recruiting activities is huge, and they should not take it. So the return on investment for hiring a leader for a company is a proven value. So what we do, what recruiters do, are targeted, proactive recruiting, and that is the key. It's not putting out ads and hoping that the right person is going to answer the ad. It is finding the individual that you want, finding what technology, what management skills you want, and to go out and specifically recruit them individually. And that proactive, targeted recruiting is something that headhunters do and companies usually do not. So why not recruit in-house? I mean, obviously, we're talking a lot of money here. Why not do it just individually? Well, of course, the answer is that human resource folks simply are not trained and skilled in that area. They are trained to be benefits administrators, and they're trained to work on classifications and merit pay and employee relations and labor contracts, and they are not trained to be recruiters, and they don't probably have any classes from universities on recruiting and interviewing. They're not objective. They are in-house. They know their local people, and they really can't give the kind of objectivity that is needed to do a major search. And as I say, they are experts in benefits and classifications, but not in recruiting. Also, it takes a tremendous amount of time to recruit, and their time is usually taken up by major issues, urgencies that are happening at the company at the time, and they will always be pulled away from recruiting, and they will not put their full attention on that. So I think that recruiting actually, in my opinion, should be an area that should be focused on by companies, but they should have a totally separate recruiting area. Some very large companies will have recruiting departments, and that's all they do. Now, even in those areas, however, where there is a full-time recruiting department, they will still use executive recruiters for very specialized recruiting assignments, for a new project, for a new field that they're going into, for the president or the chief financial officer, or for members of their board of directors that really need a very careful screening. They will use executive recruiters. So who uses recruiters? Well, at this point, just about everybody does. Universities and governments, hospitals, healthcare, very small companies, entrepreneurial companies who don't have the resources, industry, all throughout industry, research institutions, nonprofits, retail, just about everybody. Churches, synagogues, all kinds of religious institutions, everybody uses recruiters. Now, I put in real estate brokers, not because they use recruiters. They do not. But when I first got into business, we talked about the days when real estate brokers first came on the scene, and it was 85% of people sold their houses on their own. 85%, and 15% sold them through a broker. But now that is totally shifted. So 85% use brokers and only 15 on their own. I want to welcome anybody who is listening to me ramble on here, that if you would like to ask a question, I would love to answer them. Let me see, there are a couple of, let's see. Okay, so a couple of remarks from Lisa here about ads. No, recruiters usually don't put ads in the paper. The only people that read the ads are people who are looking, and when I get my outlandish fee from my clients, they don't want people who are looking. They want me to target people that they want. So we usually don't put ads in the paper. Sometimes we do. Really depends on the client. Okay, so what are the charges? So a contingency firm, the ones who get paid at the end of the search, as we talked about earlier, they get 25% of the first year total compensation. Okay, so if someone makes, $100,000, the contingency person will get $25,000. Now, a retained person will get 25 to 40%, depending on the company that you use, but a third of that compensation is paid up front. So, and it will be the total year compensation. So, in the a case of an executive officer, well, they'll get a large salary plus sizable bonuses, and for a salesperson, commissions. The recruiter will charge. I charge 33%. 1/3, and that's pretty much the going rate is 33%, but some of the larger firms do pay 40, do charge 40. So for those who do that, it's 40% of the total first year compensation. Full bonuses, full commission, full salary. So a third of that will be up front, even before we start. And then the second third will be, I charge the second third when I bring candidates in that they think are viable candidates. I get the second retainer at that point. Some companies will simply do it in 30 days. They will get their second retainer. And many retaining companies do it. The final retainer is in 60 days, and then the entire fee is then paid off. Now, I don't do it that way. My final retainer is paid when I have completed the search. So in a way, the way I do my business, it's a little bit of a mixture between retained and contingency searching. So that is how those are paid. Now, usually there's a very strong guarantee. Like for me, in my firm, we guarantee every placement to be 1 full year So if someone does not make it, or leaves on his own, or is fired from the company, whatever happens, we will replace that person within a year. We do not pay the money back, but we will replace the person within a year at no charge. The only charge we charge are any expenses that are involved. So the guarantee, I believe, I'm not sure about the contingency, guys, but I think contingency, they guarantee their people for 30 or 60 days. I'm not sure. But I guarantee them for a year. That's something that you would have to consider when you sign your contract with your new people. For the contract people, I think they charge a percentage of the employee's salary, and it's paid throughout their employment. So I believe that in many cases, the individual will actually get a check from the company, like Manpower or CareerQuest or one of these companies, and they will pay all the. They will actually work for Manpower. But they will work on the site of the client. Again, this is not my area of expertise, the contract side. So when you are searching for a good contract recruiter, you might want to look at that. So I have a couple of okay, so Lisa says that's correct. In contract work, the individual is the employee of the staffing firm. Yeah, and so the check will come from the the company, and then all of so when they have to let this person go, first of all, they're not counted as part of their head count, part of their FTE, their full-time employment figures, nor do they have to pay any kind of severance when they let them go, because they are not employed for them. So, but as I say, the contract world is a world that I'm not as familiar with that. And Lisa tells me that she has seen guarantees for contingency people of 30, 90, or 120 days. Okay, so there you have it. Yeah, I guarantee them for a full year, and I spend a lot of time on post-placement services. I make sure that these people are right, and that everybody was honest with each other, and whatever. Now, one of the reasons why I personally guarantee them for a year is because I've done a lot of referencing, a lot of background checks, a lot of interviews with the individual company, so that I know what this is all about, and I trust the job that I have done to assure that this individual is going to stay. And also, I spend quite a bit of time, if there is a bump in the road, if things don't go so well when the individual first starts work, and that has happened, and we spend a lot of time finding out what went wrong and how we can improve things. But I have not had to replace people. Well, I don't remember the last time. It's been years. So that's how the charges go. And yes, it can be very pricey. I mean, if you're going to hire a president of a company for $300,000, it's $100,000. It's $100,000 fee. Now, one thing I did not mention about the fees, especially for the retained folks, is that in addition to the fee as mentioned, we also charge for expenses. And we'll talk a little bit later about how you can, as the employer, really look at that contract so that you don't get charged an arm and a leg for expenses. That can be very, very pricey. So we'll talk a little bit about expenses, but yeah, in addition to the fee, I will charge expenses as well. So again, if you have any questions about any of this material, please type in on the left-hand quadrant here, and I will be sure to answer them. Okay, so how do you find a recruiter? How do you shop for one? Well, let me say this. Recruiting is not as localized as it used to be. I mean, obviously, the use of the phone is far less expensive for long-distance calling than it was 20, 30 years ago. So people can really go anywhere. And I had a friend of mine that said, hey, these were the days when this statement was used back in the days where there were phone booths. I haven't seen a phone booth in a long time. And he said, hey, just give me a phone booth and a bunch of quarters and I'm in business. And that's sort of interesting. Excuse me, because you can go anywhere. Don't think that you have to stay in your local community to find your recruiter. But on the other hand, don't disregard your local community. There might be some very talented recruiters and recruiters that really understand the unique elements of your town and your city and why someone should move where you are. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I also work for the Facility for Rare Isotope Beams, and one of the reasons why they hired me is because I knew the local area. I was able to sell the Lansing and East Lansing area in terms of what kind of place is it to live in, what kind of educational opportunities are there for their children, and what's it like to live here. So they really did need someone local for that. But in finding a recruiter, I think references are the best way. Use your network. Talk to folks who are within other companies, local people, all the people that you know. Talk to leaders and managers, especially attorneys and accountants and bankers and consultants who are working with companies all over the place, and let them know what you're looking for. And I am sure that they are aware of recruiters that they have worked with, or they have referred to other companies that are very good. So that's the best place to find people. Now you can also go to LinkedIn, which is really becoming the recruiter's hideout today. I mean, LinkedIn is one of the most important elements on the web for a recruiter to become involved in. And if you plug in the right questions and the right keywords on your LinkedIn file, you will be able to find recruiters who specialize in your industry, who know your town, who know the size of company that you're involved with. The other thing, of course, is through associations that you are a member of, whether it be SHRM or if I'm speaking to company presidents or whatever, you're a member of a chamber of commerce or a specific trade association. Ask those folks who they use, what kind of headhunters do they look for, and that's really your best way of looking. Certainly no one uses the yellow pages anymore, but even if you use Google, those ads are paid for, and I would really trust a good reference from people who you know. And also talk to people who have been placed by these people, not only who have worked with them as employers and clients. I apologize. Okay, so that's how you find a recruiter. So how do you hire one? Well, this can be very, very tricky. First of all, you need to see, if you possibly can, you need to see recruiters individually, face-to-face. Now, what I'm talking about, obviously, is the higher-level contingency recruiter, or the retained recruiter who is going to do a six-figure search for you. You really have to see the whites of their eyes, I think, and really understand them, and for you to understand each other. So I would really interview these folks carefully. Now, It is possible that you don't have to see them face to face. You can do it on the phone, and that's fine. But even if you do it on the phone, be very careful about what you're listening for and know what to ask. First of all, you want to find out exactly what they deliver. And by that I mean you want to know if they are going to send you reports, if they are going to, how many candidates will they give you and how long will it take them? How many are you actually going to see face to face? Now, when I do an executive retained search, I always travel to see a candidate before my client does. So I will never recommend a candidate to a client until I have seen them face to face first. So you want to ask questions like that. Now, do you see these clients before I do? And how do you screen them before I see them? And I would really check references. Talk to their clients, talk to their candidates, and what do they think about them. One of the things you really have to think about is trust. Can you trust this person? Is he going to be, and I think I talk about that in another slide, so I'm not going to talk about that extensively now, but boy, that is so important. I would also look at the materials that they have given to other clients. One of the major pieces of deliverables that we as headhunters create is the profile, is the job description, and in doing so, especially retained people will come on board, come on site, and really spend quite a bit of time finding out everything about that company, the culture, the individuals, what your future plans are, what challenges are there in the company, what issues are there coming down the pike, what markets are you going to get into, why did the previous guy leave, what are you looking for in the next guy, and really spend a lot of time doing that. So what you should do is examine the materials that they have assembled for other clients and see what they look like, and see if you would feel comfortable with that. Because don't forget, this headhunter, this recruiter, will be the face of your company in the marketplace when you are doing a search. And so you want to make sure that that individual is really the kind of person that you want to represent you. And I would carefully examine their charges and their expense. What kind of expenses will they expense back to you? There are some of these guys who, whenever they fly to see a client, a candidate, they will always fly first class. Well, I don't have to tell you how much that's going to cost you as a client. That's going to cost a tremendous amount of money. So you don't want to be saddled with those costs. So get a sense as to what they charge for. Do they charge for research and name generation from companies? Do they charge for using research companies to do this for you? What kind of charges do they do, and then what kind of guarantees do they have? And really be very, very careful. I will also find out what kind of checking they do in terms of reference checking and background checks and all that. And with major companies like Spencer Stewart and Korn Ferry and some of these other major multinational companies, who will actually do the work? The person that's coming out to see you, he or she may be the rainmaker and going out and getting the business. But in terms of actually going out and talking to people, get a real good sense as to what their process is, who is going to do it, how it's going to be done. Ask them what their method is. How do they go about getting names? And really get a sense as to if they know your business. And of course, the final thing is, how long will it take? I mean, is this going to take a year? Is it going to take a month? Is it going to take 2 months? Get a sense as to what the time frame is, and then hold them to it. Now the next thing is do they have experience at this level of search? I mean, if they are looking for a company president, excuse me, this takes a level of discretion and of savvy and of maturity that a lot of search guys don't have. If you have a young search person who's only been doing the work for 2-3 years, I doubt if they can handle themselves in those situations. So ask them, how many searches have you done at this level? Have you done this before? And what have you done in our industry? I mean, let's say you make high-tech glass for certain applications. Well, have they worked with glass companies? Do they have contacts in the glass industry? What associations are they a member of in the glass industry? And really find out what kinds of searches they've had, and also ask them what kinds of searches they've done in your geographical area. Have they worked in Lansing? Have they worked in Detroit? Have they worked in Midland or in other cities throughout the country? And how familiar are they with that? Because they will have to sell the local area as well. So Lisa tells me that the MSU Alumni Association is aware of recruiters with Spartan roots from across the U.S. And that's true. There's a lot of very good recruiters out there who are MSU grads and who really understand the MSU culture and will help you do that. The other thing to think about is discretion. I mean, this is a very discreet job. You don't want a recruiter sitting down with you and telling war stories about all these other clients that they've worked with, because or even making fun of other clients that they've worked with. You want someone to really have discretion. This is a very confidential job, and people have to understand how important that is. And you want them to be a class act, because, as I said, these recruiters are going to represent you out in the marketplace. You are telling the world that you are looking for a high-level individual, and you are using a high-level recruiter, and that's going to reflect back on you. So those kinds of things are very important. And I skipped over following up after the hire. Now, I talked to you about what I do, and you might really ask recruiters, what do they do after the individual is hired, and what if there's a problem? What if things are not working well? There's always transitional issues that come up with titles, with reporting responsibilities. Excuse me, and sometimes they are not prepared to do that. So sometimes you have to play social worker. You've got to play a counselor during these moments to really make this work. So I see Lisa has sent me another letter here. If I want to work with a specific recruiting firm but don't like the recruiter the company has assigned me, is it appropriate for me to ask for a different recruiter? Of course. Yeah, and again, you really have to find out how these firms work. Now, the large firms split their job functions up in a lot of different ways. They will have a staff that all they do is research, and they will have a staff that all they do is interview candidates, and they will have a staff that only interacts with the client. So find out about that, and you may call the managing director of the firm or the president of the firm and say, I'd like to use your firm. I know you work in our industry a lot, but I'm not all that happy with the recruiter can I find somebody else? And that's a good question, because your relationship with the recruiter is very, very important. You have got to feel comfortable with this person. You've got to really understand where they're coming from, and you should feel comfortable talking to them, because guess what? You're going to be talking with them a lot over the next few months. Okay, so what is on my next slide? You never know about these things. There it is. Okay, so yes, price is very negotiable. It depends on a lot of different things. Maybe you are going to tell the recruiter that you want to do 3 or 4 assignments at the same time. Well, if you do that, then they could reduce the cost. But I do want to urge you that your relationship and your chemistry and your trust in the recruiter is more important than getting a better price. Okay, that the whole deal here is not the best price. The whole deal here is finding someone who really understands, and I didn't make this clear before, and I want to make it clear now. You want a recruiter who understands your issues, who understands what your problems are, the corporate culture of your company, the history of your company, and more important than that, really is excited about your company and what the future is, and going out and helping your company get better. I get very excited about really having a part in the future growth of a company, because I really really have gotten into that company. So find a recruiter who you really feel comfortable with, and that's really important. Do they understand your culture? And remember, hiring can be a nightmare even if you use a recruiter. So make sure, not all recruiters are great, so make sure you find one who you can work with, who is honest, who has a good reputation. And trust is the key word, because you are putting a lot in this recruiter's into his arms. You're putting out salaries, you're putting out personalities, the future of your company, all kinds of stuff. So the guy's got to be discreet. You have to trust him or her, and when the person calls and tells you about a candidate, you have to trust this person, that this candidate in fact is as good as the recruiter says he is. Okay, what is on my next slide? Here we go. Okay, so now we talk about actually working with the recruiter. I want to just say one thing about the previous slide. You should have a contract. It should be a signed contract. It should be very, very clear what is expected, what the deliverables are, when they will be paid, what expectations there are. Make sure there's a contract. Read every word of it, because it does change from one recruiter to another. Okay, so now you've got them. Now what? Well, when you sit with the recruiter, I want you to agree on a process that is agreeable to both of you. Yes, it's his business or her business, and they know how to do what they do, but it should also be agreeable with your style and the way you operate. So at the beginning especially, spend the necessary time that the recruiter asks you to. It's not enough just to hand it over to him. You have to be this is a partnership. You have to work together to make this happen. So you have to agree upon the fact that you will answer his calls. That when he calls, it's not to see how the Spartans did at the Final Four, or how the Tigers are playing. It's really for an important matter, and many things in the recruiting process is very time sensitive, very urgent sensitive. So you really have to be accessible to him or her, and you really have to open up. You have to trust this person and really tell them the problems, the issues, what's going to come up, because if you don't tell him, a candidate will know. Candidates out there have friends who work for you, and they will mention, well, they fired their president 2 years ago. Now, tell me what happened there. Well, you better tell this recruiter what the scuttlebutt is, so that when it comes up, you will be able to answer. Require a whole process of follow-ups from this recruiter. How often will he get back to you, and what is happening? And if things aren't working, tell them. But if he asks you to do something, do it his or her way. I mean, they know their business, and it'll work best if they do it that way. Let me see. There was one other thing I wanted to mention. Take a look at some early individuals who he is or she is recruiting for you, to make sure that he is really on the right track, that he does understand what you've been trying to tell him, because sometimes there is a misunderstanding. And so take a look at those early resumes, make sure that they're right, so that he doesn't waste his time and you don't waste yours. So what is it like to work with recruiters? Well, recruiters are very direct people. I always like to say that everybody lies to us. My clients lie to me because maybe the company is not as good as they say they are. Maybe they'll pay more than they say they will. Maybe they are in their financial shape is not as good as they say. And maybe it's not such a great place to work as they say they are. And my candidates always lie to me. Maybe they're not as good as they say they are. Maybe they're not making as much as they say they are, as they say they do, and maybe they've been fired along the line, and they haven't told me. So we've learned to be pretty direct as to finding out exactly what the truth is on both sides. Headhunters are usually pretty good communicators. We have to be. We talk to a lot of people, and we have to find out what they really want to do. And they're basically salesmen. They're selling your company. They're selling your opportunity. We have to be pretty intuitive. We have to be tough. We have to understand your business and the technology. So we have to be smart. And almost all recruiters are pretty aggressive as well, but sometimes they're emotional. Sometimes recruiters will get really upset if you don't do it their way, and if you go against what they want. So sometimes they can be temperamental. Yes, Lisa, I know you're surprised that I say that, but some can be. So look at all of these, and I think you'll find that most every headhunter that you talk to are in that area. Okay, so what do you watch out for? Well, honesty. You want to make sure that this guy is really is telling you the truth about the candidates. Have they really spoken to the candidates? Sometimes they will tell you about a candidate and they've never spoken to him. They've never even called him on the phone. They found the resume. The resume came in on another search, and they just want to tell you that that they did all this research. Well, maybe they didn't. And this is the issue that I talked about previously. Do they really understand what you want? They say they do, but in the way they talk about a candidate and the way they present, the candidates they present to you, do they really understand what your issues are? And if they are on the wrong path, tell them right away. And are they really working hard enough, especially for contingency guys? Sometimes they won't be, and you'll have to let them know that there's an urgency here. That you need to have this person quickly, and you might even want to pay a premium, to put all your attention on this search. Are they working on it, and are things moving as fast as you want them to. 6 months later, and they say, "Geez, we haven't found anybody yet." Well, that's a problem. So maybe they're not really giving their all. And trust your gut. I mean, is this person doing a good job? You could usually tell. And just because you hire a highfalutin headhunter and you're paying him thousands of dollars, don't totally trust him to do the job up to your expectations. Let him know that you are monitoring this entire engagement. And what's interesting about this whole thing is you as a client will learn. What will you learn? Well, you'll learn a little bit more about your corporate culture. You'll learn to move quickly and make quick decisions. Headhunters will let you know what the reputation of your company is out there, what he hears on the street. This is all good good information for you guys. You might even learn to interview better by listening to the kinds of questions that they put out. You might even learn how to make a better job description from the ones that your recruiter does. And you will also see how important the right people in the right positions are. So, boy, hey, I timed it right. So really, that's about it. And I obviously think that the future to your company's success is within the people that you hire, the talent that you hire, and those issues are simply too important, and they are too critical to the future of your company to put it up to chance. I think you've got to hire recruiters to go out and target specific people to hire into your company. So thank you very much for listening. If any are still out there, and if you have any questions about this, feel free to call me at any time. Lisa tells me that this will be on file, and my name and phone number and address and email is all out there. So thank you very much, and thank you, Lisa, for allowing me to do that.
Well, and Ken, I really appreciated your that I actually have a background to our audience as a third-party recruiter as well. I was in the contingency space and also in the contract space, so I'm giggling out of relating to some of what Ken said. And just real quick, because we do have 4 minutes, there are two things that I wanted to kind of pose to Ken to see what he thinks on that. One, in my own experience as a recruiter, I was often...
I'm sorry, Lisa, I only take questions from people who are listening.
Yeah. So I was brought in as a recruiter, oftentimes pretty late in the game. The company had been looking for 3 months, 6 months, couldn't find anybody, and then they reached out to a recruiter. What do you think, Ken, in terms of when people reach out to you as a retained recruiter, do you notice a difference in terms of when they bring you in, how soon?
Well, that's a good question. I usually like to come in real early. It doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes companies, as you say, are looking and they failed. There have been failed searches, and then I'm brought in. And then, boy, when they have failed their own searches, they really do listen to me. Sometimes even more so than if they start me at the beginning. But I usually like to really get in on the ground floor as to creating that whole job description and what is needed. But yeah, sometimes if they have a failed search, they call me then.
Yeah, and you were mentioning too in terms of the recruiter and the company, you at the company getting on the same page in terms of what's needed. In my own experience, I encountered situations where maybe myself and my contact at the company were on the same page, but as we got deeper into the process, other decision makers had a completely different view of what the priority was for the position, what they were actually looking for. Do you have any advice for those who know they have multiple line managers involved in a search process as to how they can get everybody on the same page?
Well, by you asking that question, it reminds me, Lisa, that I didn't put in one thing earlier in the presentation, which is when we come in to write that job description, we not only talk to the hiring authority, but we talk to everybody in the company who is going to be interacting with that individual. So we don't talk to just one person. We talk to everybody. And we try to get everybody on the same page. And that sometimes is the hardest thing, because everyone's got a different agenda. Everyone wants this person for a different reason. And so really trying to get everybody on the same page is the hardest thing, because is the most important thing, because once we get people in, we want everyone looking for the same guy, rather than one group saying, boy, I want a great communicator, or I want a great technical person, or I want a great person who knows the technical aspect. Everyone's got to do. It's just like they're describing an elephant. It's really important to get everybody on the same page, and that's sometimes the hardest job that we have.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I want to honor everyone's time. It's right here at 3:30. I've already received requests for recording the recording of this webcast. I'm going to leave the web room open for a moment, so those who want a recording, who don't have my email address yet, you can see it in the chat content. You can also see the link to Ken's website. I'm going to take the PowerPoint back to his main contact information. But thank you so much, Ken. I always appreciate your style and your approach. You're a fun person to work with, and it's great to have you on board for this. This has been a webcast through the professional series of the MSU Alumni Association. We offer webcasts the second and fourth Thursday of each month from 12:30 to 1:30 Eastern Time. Our next webcast will be in 2 weeks, and it will be me covering effective techniques for working with recruiters from the job seeker's point of view. So thank you for joining us today. I'm going to end the recording, but again, leave the web room open for probably the next 5 minutes or so. Thank you, attendees, and thank you, Ken.